Hey, what's up guys? So today I'm going to talk about how to stretch your septum. Now, I've had my septum pierced for a long ass time. It's almost my 1-year anniversary with having my septum stretched to an 8 gauge, and I wanted to show you how to stretch your septum. The first question I get a lot is, why the fuck would you want to stretch your septum? First of all, it's aesthetically pleasing to me. I can wear cooler jewelry and it's more substantial looking. Like, it's thicker and it just looks really pretty to me. Of course, not everyone's gonna understand why you want to stretch your septum, just like how some people don't understand why you get piercings or tattoos. The thing that matters is if you want to do it for aesthetic reasons or any other reason. If you want to stretch your septum, I'm going to tell you how to do it safely, properly, and how to take care of it. First things first is when you get your septum pierced, usually they will pierce you at a 16 or a 14 gauge. You always want to ask what gauge your piercing is pierced at. My septum was pierced at a 16 gauge. I didn't really have plans on stretching it at the time. That's why I got it pierced at such a small gauge. If you do have plans on stretching your septum, I suggest getting it pierced at a larger gauge. After you have your septum pierced, you want to wait between 6 months to a year before stretching it. This allows your septum to heal completely. You want to listen to your body. If it doesn't feel right at 6 months, wait another month. I have my ears stretched to a 5/8 and I have my septum stretched to an 8 gauge. With stretching your ears and stretching your septum, it's kind of different, so you want to research it beforehand. With anything, you want to research, right? You don't want to go in there ignorant and just do it. When I was planning on stretching my septum, I got 3 sizes. You can watch my stretching my septum from 16 to 14 gauge video here. A 14 gauge, a 12 gauge, and a 10 gauge. After stretching my septum to a 10 gauge, I decided that bigger is better for me, so I stretched it up to my current size, which is a 8 gauge. I wanted to stretch the next size up to a 14 gauge. In order to do that, I used a single 14 gauge taper. If I was stretching my septum all over again, is to get a taper. It has that little notch at the end so that when I was stretching, it would seamlessly go through like that. But at the time, I didn't think it through and I just got a flat taper. If you watch the video, you can tell that like my eyes are watering, I'm sneezing a lot. I did experience discomfort, which is common for stretching your septum. But as I was passing my 14 gauge through, there was a gap between the taper and the circular barbell, and that kind of hurt my septum. This is my setup. This is a 16 gauge piece of jewelry, 14 gauge, 12, 10, and my current size 8 gauge, and you want to use jojoba oil or emu oil or vitamin E or coconut oil. So if you are stretching your septum from a 16 gauge, you want to go to a 14 gauge. That's the next gauge up. And then you want to have either a circular barbell that is internally threaded. The problem with externally threaded is the threading will tear up your fresh fistula. Fistula is the area where your piercing is, the hole. So if you have an externally threaded piece of jewelry, it will tear it up. So you want to get a internally threaded. Use beautiful, high quality pieces in your septum. Even if you're only stretching and staying at that size for a month, you want to use glass. You want to use surgical steel, not stainless steel. You want to use titanium, nothing coated, nothing acrylic. You want to use high quality pieces of jewelry so your septum heals and is ready for the next step and the next stretch. The best way to stretch your septum is with an internally threaded circular barbell. At the smaller sizes though, you can get away with a crescent or a pincher, titanium or glass. The thing with surgical steel jewelry is this is a lot heavier than glass and titanium. Kind of on the plus side to get a heavier piece of jewelry, because that kind of helps it stretch a tiny bit while you're waiting to use a taper to stretch your septum. So you want to get your 14 gauge circular barbell, your taper, and some lubricant. I use jojoba oil. In my first stretching video, you may notice that I'm tearing up a lot and sneezing a lot. That's because it's a very sensitive area, but it wasn't super painful. It was uncomfortable, but it was okay. That stretch took probably about 25 minutes, which is a lot longer than stretching your ears. With stretching your ears, in the smaller sizes, you take a taper, put it through, follow up with your plugs, and then you're done. With stretching your septum, it's in such a sensitive area that you want to go slowly with it, which is nice. I got to watch like a movie and like slowly do it and film a YouTube video for you guys. So the process of stretching your septum is fairly easy. I'm going to demonstrate this with my 8 gauge. Take out the jewelry that you're wearing. Make sure that your hands are thoroughly clean and that your area for stretching your septum is all set up. And take your lube of choice. Squirt a little bit on. Put it in your nose. Take your taper. Lube that up thoroughly. Make sure it's not incredibly slippery. Insert the end into your nose. Usually, you might feel a little bit of pressure or a little bit of stinging, but it's bearable. For stretching your septum, it's different than stretching your ears because you want to go slowly with the stretch. You want to make sure you like tap it lightly or push it lightly. If it starts hurting, like actually hurting, you want to stay in this position for a little bit. Watch a movie on YouTube, watch a video, do whatever, relax, read a little bit, and then slowly tap it through. Once it gets to a certain point of the taper, if you see, my taper is pretty straightforward. Once it gets to that certain sweet spot, you want to start to follow it up with the jewelry. So mine has this convenient notch right here where you can connect the jewelry to and push it through. And there you go, you have a stretched septum. For waiting between stretches, so when I got my septum pierced, I didn't have any plans to stretch it or anything. I think I had it like for 5 years or so before I initially made the stretch from 16 to a 14 gauge. I waited 1 month between 14 to 12 gauge, almost 2 months between 12 gauge to 10 gauge. I also didn't film that because it was a very easy stretch as well. So the timeline for stretching your piercings usually depends on your body, but you should wait at least this amount of time per gauge. So between 16 and 14, you want to wait 1 month. Between 14 and 12, you want to wait 1 month. Between 12 and 10, you want to wait 1.5 months, so a month and a half. Between 10 and 8, you want to wait 2 months. And between 8 gauge to all the way to the 0 gauge, you want to wait 3 months. Sometimes more. It depends on your body. That's the same with stretching your ears. You want to wait those same timelines. Now, between 10 gauge and 8 gauge, you're supposed to wait a minimum of 2 months, but I waited an entire 6 months because I thought that 10 gauge was going to be my goal size. I want to talk about jewelry. What I usually love to wear in my septum is glass. I love wearing glass. This right now is a glass crescent, but sometimes you'll see me wearing my glass retainer. This is super comfy, and although it's a weird shape and unconventional looking, it's very comfy and easy to wear. So as you can see, this is what it looks like down and what it looks like flipped up. I also have a surgical steel crescent, so this is what that looks like. You can flip it up. The initial reason why I wanted to stretch my septum is so that I can do a thing called stacking. I wanted to stack multiple pieces of jewelry in my nose to create a certain aesthetic. I stacked 3 18 gauge pieces of jewelry in my nose with nothing in it, and it looked very pretty. I'll insert a picture here. That's why I wanted to stretch my septum. An 8 gauge is 3 millimeters. So if you do have plans on stretching, you want to measure out how many pieces of jewelry you can wear and how realistic that would be. I can also wear smaller pieces of jewelry if I do decide to do that by using a silicone eyelet. It's squishy because it's made out of silicone. This is a Chaos software, so I can put smaller pieces of jewelry in here and wear it through my septum. So as you can see, having a stretch septum is super versatile. You can wear many pieces of jewelry in it, as well as multiple pieces of jewelry, and there's a lot of jewelry options that are very beautiful. So you're probably wondering how you heal a stretch septum. Between stretches, you want to just leave it alone. Just leave it the fuck alone. Don't touch it too much. Don't change the jewelry right away. If you do feel like your septum is sore, do a chamomile tea soak. Boil some water and steep the tea bag for about, I don't know, 10 minutes. You want to make sure it's 100% chamomile tea, nothing weird added to it, and just soak your piercing in that for 10 minutes. If your septum does get crusty, you want to clean your piercing just in the shower, just with warm water. I think that's it for my stretch septum video. Holy fuck. I can't believe I did that without a script. I am going to do a complete my jewelry collection video soon, where you will see my septum jewelry, where you will see my septum jewelry collection in depth. Okay, yeah, alright, well, I hope you liked that video. I hope you learned something, and I will see you soon. Okay.